All right, so let's take a look at where we left off before. We have a bunch of buttons here, and we can select the correct answer. We have a timer. I'm kind of locked out. And then we have it where it goes to 10 seconds. And during this 10-second period, it's going to the next question, which is essentially the current question over again. Or during the 10 seconds, it shows us what the correct answer is, and then we move on. So there's a couple things we need to do here. Um, and we're going to be using a list to store our questions, our scriptable object questions here, and access them. So what we'll need to do is essentially modify how we're going about getting our question, because right now this was used a little bit more for testing, right? So if we go to our quiz canvas here, you can see we have our answer buttons, and then we have this quiz script that's attached to our quiz canvas. Inside of it, it has the access to this text field as well as the scriptable object. So let's remove the serialized field here so we no longer access it from our view. And then what we want to do is we want to make this our storing our current question. Because remember, we always want to store off a reference whenever we're working with data, right? So we're storing a current question. And then what we could do is we can cycle through a list of all of the questions. And then whatever question we arrive at, we can store in here and then manipulate that specific question. We're kind of like breaking apart the data. And actually, now that I think about it, this gave us errors because I did that incorrectly. So I'm going to hit Control Z just to the point where I'm not renaming this, and now save that. And that should get rid of our error. Now the way we want to do this is you can right click and go to Refactor Rename, or a shortcut that I believe that works the same way. Instead of that, it's either Control RR or I think in Visual Studio F2. And then what we can do is just name this current question. And I can't stress this enough. Like, download and apply for the Student Writer account if you're not using it. I know students often wait till the very end or till they have problems, or they're like, how did you do that, before they actually do it. So that's why I keep stressing bringing up the Visual Studio aspect of it. But yes, please just install Writer. So anyway, when you hit F2 and you rename it and you scroll down now, you could see, you know, you have these current question SOs renamed here. All right, let's go ahead and create our list. Now, if you forgot what a list is, because we've used them in other lectures, that's okay. I'll try to link a video to this one that just talks about lists and how we use them in Unity. And but overall, so what we're going to do here is I'm going to get rid of this private, unless like Writer makes me add it back. And what I want to do here is let's take a look at the construction of a list again. So the first thing you do is you create a list. You write the word list, signifying that it's a list. And remember, lists are mutable. That means they can change during runtime. They can be added and removed. And then inside of the angle brackets or chevrons, we write inside of there what is the data that we're going to store in this list, and we're going to store some scriptable objects, right? This guy right here that gives us the breakdown of what goes inside of our scriptable objects here. Now, what I'm going to do is just name this one, let's say lowercase q, and then questions, or I guess we could do question scriptable objects with an S, something like that. So question scriptable objects, You could do something like that, I guess. And let's get rid of private here, just for cleanup. And do we have Unity Engine dot collection? So if I right click on this, let's see, show context actions. It says, because I just want to show you what the thing is. It says importing missing reference. And then it says import type systems.collection.generics.list. So what it's looking for is you're looking for this using Unity collections or systems. So that's what's missing. And if we go to some of these other quiz scripts, let's see. It looks like it didn't add it by default. But we don't have to, inside of our quiz here, we don't have to go as far as, that. You can go back as far as collections, I believe, and it'll still work. No, I think you need to specify generic. So let's save that. And that allows to give us access to this collections. All right, now if we look back inside of our quiz canvas here, and then we look at this quiz script, now we have a list that's empty. And what it can store is scriptable objects. Actually, I don't know if I like that. It's like SOS, like the spacing it out because of the camel casing. So I guess we could do question scriptables and then save that scriptables. Let's see if that how that looks. Questions scriptables. I don't know. We'll just do questions. So just you'll know, like when you go inside of here and you expand this and it'll say buttons. See how it says buttons there? If we add an element here, you can see it says new question scriptable object because it's from that. So you just have to be careful of that. So if you select all of these, let's make sure that our quiz canvas is selected and we lock it. I'm going to hit minus there to get rid of that, just to clean it up. You can grab all of your questions now and just drop them inside of here. And now we have a reference to all of these scriptable objects. And remember, we can access them by their element name 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So let's save this. All right, so let's go ahead and allocate that this is a new scriptable object. So let's go ahead and say new. And what are we creating? A new list of question scriptable objects. And let's save that. Let's go inside of here. And now we've allocated essentially its own space. And we now have this thing called questions. All right, so you might be wondering, well, where do I put this now, right? Well, if you scroll through here, look at the naming of how we name these methods, right? So I'm going to just kind of collapse these a little bit so we could see. We have display questions, we have on answer selected, we have display answer, and then we have get next question. So inside of get next question would be the logical choice to get the next question in our scriptable object. And then really think about, as I'm talking about this and I'm going through it, pause the video sporadically and be like, wait a second, how would I do that? How do I get the next element in an array? I know it's by 0, but like, where's get next question being called? How is that? Like, go back through your code. And again, that's why heavily commenting your personal code is important. What you want to do, or ideally, is say, you know what? I want to get the next question, but it would make the quiz a lot more fun if we got a random question. So before we display the question, we're going to get our question, right? And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new method. And this method is just going to handle getting the random question, right? So, and then it'll feed it back in. So inside of getting the next question, we first get our question, we set the button state to true, and then we're going to get our random question. Now we don't have this method yet, so I'm going to hit control and period, and I'm going to extract the method, and then I'll hit extract method, and then it'll say, oh, actually not extract method. We want to, let's see, show context actions. Let's see. I think at the end here, hit control period in between the two, create method. So I think we have to do it in between those two. And now you can see it went ahead and created that random question for me. All right, so what's the first thing we want to do inside of this, right? Let me hit control L to remove that line. All right, and so what I want to do is I want to I create a variable called index. And what this is going to do is just store a random index between 0, which is the first element in our array, and then the questions.count, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 elements. But so anywhere between 0 and 5 elements, this will just store a random number in here. Now, if you start typing out random.range and this doesn't work, like this appears red, make sure at the top you don't have anything that says like using random or anything weird in there. And make sure that you have these using system collections in there. So this could be causing any errors if you have like a using random up top. All right, so I'm going to scroll all the way back down again into my get random question method here. Let's save that. All right, so I added 2 more lines of code, just kind of spare you from watching me type. So after we get that index at that range, we're going to store in our current question scriptable object the question that's at that index. So if we get element question 1, that's the second question. And then once we're done with getting that random question, what's going to happen is it's going to store it inside of here, which is our current question, right? And I could leave that as a serialized field because remember, we're always accessing the current question to display that to the scene. So I'll show you how that works. If I hit F12 here, you can see that it takes us up to the top. And then if I click on that, you can see quiz display question. If I go there, this button.text is displaying our current question and then the answers that come from it, right? So let's see, get random question. So once it's in there, all we're doing is we're just going to remove this question from the variable. That's not going to affect the displaying of it. It's just removing. So this is part of list. So it's questions.remove. It'll remove the current question. And that just, by removing it, it just gives us space to actually start inserting the next question when we call it again. Now, in order to not get any sort of null reference exceptions, we always want to check if there is currently a question stored inside of there. If not, then we're going to do something, right? So that's pretty easy to do. We're just going to do if, and then questions here. So that's our list, right? Dot contains, and this is another method that's built right into our list thing here. So if our questions that contains the current question, that means it has one, then we're in good shape, and we can actually just go ahead and remove this. So I'm going to hold Alt and up arrow and move that up, and hit Control Alt and Enter and save that to kind of clean up my formatting here. So let's take a look at this, and we're going to notice a couple bugs as we go through this. But notice with my quiz canvas selected here, when I press play, we're going to get shorter number of lists. And the reason for that is when our game runs and we answer a question, it removes one for the list. So this is something we're going to have to fix. But I just want to show you this in action. The other thing is actually, let's see, let's unlock this. You can see we have question 1, question 2. At least we have a question there. This one has a question. Okay, just making sure that I went back and I filled out those questions. All right, so let's select our quiz canvas. I'm going to press play. And like I said, you're going to notice that our questions are going to shift in size. So you see how it removed one question, but it randomly selected a question, which is good. And then when the time ran out, it said incorrect the answer was. And there's our timer. Boom, goes to the next question. You can see it keeps removing a question here because we don't want the same question again. But we're getting an error that it's really index out of range error. And the reason for that is because it's looking for a specific count. And as we're lowering the numbers here, the index, which means the number of indices that we originally told it that we wanted, are moving. So we need to fix all of those errors in the code. So the first fix is if we go up to start here, remember what we're doing is we're displaying the question right at start, and we've already got this logic in there. It's okay if you forgot when we did it. And what it does is it gets the next question. So you could either comment this line out or just Control L to delete that. And just to show you where that's being called, if we go down to our get next question, let's see, get next question, we have display question down here already. So let me go ahead and clean up this space a little bit. The next thing we want to do is, this is where we're getting the next question. And this is where we're getting that index out of range error. And this is a pretty easy fix. All we want to say here is if our questions dot count is greater than 0. Now I've had students tell me like, oh, like there's all this code that we're doing, and I watch tutorials on the internet, and I'm not sure I can do this, like what we're doing here. I put some videos up about like giving advice and stuff about this, like about stuff like that, whether it's anxiety about not remembering how things work. And so just make sure to reach out to me. I'll send you those videos, or we can meet and discuss it. But just thought that came to mind as I was doing this. So anyway, back to the tutorial. We have these if questions.count is greater than 0. That's going to double check. And then if it is greater than 0, then we won't get that index out of error, because we'll start our game, we'll get a random question, we'll display stuff. And if you forgot where get next question is called, again, just press F12 and you can see, hey, in update, if our timer.load next question, right, is as active. And if you're like, wait, where's timer? Well, remember, we made a timer class here, and inside of here, we have a load next question method, and so, where's that at? Sorry. Let's do timer here and then hit F12. And here's the timer. And then the load next question is actually, let's hit F12 on that. Just want to show you this. And that's this Boolean here. So we've built in this Boolean. Sorry, it wasn't a method, but we built in this Boolean to check if our timer was set. Anyway, let's go back down to quiz here. And let's scroll to get next question. And here's our if statement. So again, you could always go back. And if by switching around, you still understand the code, then that's really all it is. You don't have to memorize all of the code for an entire game. You just have to know how to read code and understand what some of this stuff is, and then build your logic and problem solving skills by developing games on your own, as well as just kind of like going through tutorials and then writing what you think is going on and commenting. All right, so let's save this and let's test it. I'm going to save that. I'm going to go ahead and press play. And you should see it. We have our questions here. It got rid of one, because that's the question we're looking at here, was that one. And here we go. Got rid of the next question. And you got rid of the next question. So there you go. All right, I think this lesson got pretty long, but I hope you enjoyed it. And then, yeah, look out for the videos where I kind of give advice. And these are really just giving you advice to questions that I get a lot. I have sometimes up to 120 students, sometimes a semester, if I'm teaching at the same institution or maybe multiple ones. So when you're looking, a lot of the questions you have or concerns really are part of a community. And that's another point that I want to get to, is make sure that you get it as part of a community, like of game developers in your area. Anyway, enough of that. I'll talk to you later, and I hope you enjoyed this lecture.